So now we're going to do a still life, 2 tomatoes and garlic on a wood block. I'm going to start with the left tomato. Once I decide how big this tomato is, everything else is in proportion to that tomato. So you'll notice that right here is where the tomato hits the base of the wood block. You can tell by the shadow. It's only hitting right here. So this left tomato kisses the right tomato and it's slightly in front of it. And we can tell by making a line like this, taking a straight line like that, going to our image and seeing where that straight line falls and seeing that it falls about that much. I'm going to take this line to here. And now I'm going to make the second tomato, which is kissing the left tomato. And about here is where it hits. The left tomato's in front of it a little bit. So we want to make the same negative space here and here that we see on the image. Now I'm going to round out this. And I'm going to use my pencil. I'm going to see where does that second right tomato fall. And it falls like this. So it's angled up a little bit more and hits right here because this angles that way. I'm rounding that out. There's a little bit of a depression right there for where the sepal is. I had to find that out. The sepal and the stem of the tomato. I'm going to do that. So let's see, if I take this across and put it here, that tells me that this is really a lot smaller of a tomato. So I'm going to erase that, and I'm using a kneaded eraser, but I can also use this eraser. And I am going to soften that like that. And I can't really see how this curves because the garlic is in front of it. I do see that this angles a little bit, so it's really important that I kind of push that angle and this angles that way. So let's return to this first tomato and let's put the sepal, which is those little they're like little leaves that come up from where the stem, they surround the stem basically. And if I take my pencil again, I want to find out the angle of my stem, and my stem goes up. It's about this thick. And I'm checking again what it's doing across, and it's kind of straight, but there's a little bit, it angles up a little bit. I'm also going to put other parts of the sepal. I see that it crosses in front of the stem. So that's 1, 2. There's something that curls in between, like this, and folds around. And you see how I'm sort of, lines are crisscrossing. We will refine this later. We are just laying it out. I also see that this crosses, and it's hard to tell where it's coming from. So I'm just going to play with all the negative space. So there's negative space right here. So I'm going to put a line in there. This folds around like this, and there's a little bit of negative space right there. And then another part of a sepal comes out that way. But I see, I'm going to erase that, because I didn't check the space and realize that really that area comes out here, more like here, so that you need that space, that negative space in between there. Okay. Now, if I see where the thick part of the stem angles, I'm going to do that by checking to see where it falls, and it falls right in here. So I know that this skinny part of the stem meets up. There's a little bit of a point there, and then it starts to angle off. And I want to see, where does it angle off? It angles off sort of like this. Okay, so now I'm adding the thicker stem. And then I see the space here, and I'm just going to do this for now, and I'll double check it when I have more reference of how wide this will be. What does that equal? Let me just do a few more things to compare it to. Now I'm going to do the sepal and the stem for this, for the right tomato. And I'm going to pay attention to where the stem falls here. So in relation to the right tomato, that looks right. And then there's a sepal that comes out like that, and I'm not really sure where it goes yet. I'm just pulling things out, and I noticed that there's also another sepal leaf that comes out like that. And if I actually got this correct in width, let's see, we have this, and it's about halfway. It comes across. It sort of slightly angles down. And then I'm very much interested in the negative space between this and this. So I did that, and that looks right. Now I'm looking at another sepal leaf, and that crawls around. And I'm also looking at the triangle that's going on right there. And goes a little lower than what I have. All of that detail really isn't that important. As long as it looks like leaves coming out, sepal leaves, that's totally fine. I'm just trying to teach you how to use proportion with space. With seeing where it falls here tells me that this crawls around like that. It almost looks like spider legs. And then there's one right underneath it, and it has a really tiny negative space in between there. And then that creates another negative space right there. And I'm going to bring this around like that. Okay. So right now I just drew 2 tomatoes. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to take my pencil to see where this extended stem falls. And it falls right here. Right here. So this comes around, has a little bit of a bulby. It hits just like that. Good, very good. So let's double check some things. Let's erase all these lines I made so that they're not confusing. Remember, try to draw lightly. When we bring in shading and shadow, we can be more deliberate with our pencil marks. Right now, we're just figuring out where things are. And I'm rounding this around, and I want to look at, this goes in front, and it hits here. And I want to see, and this goes in front. Does that look like about the space? Yes. Does that look about the space? Yes. Does this fall at the right place? About yes. So it looks good. So now we want to add the garlic. And the garlic falls a little bit after the middle. Let's say this was the middle, because the stem is always in the middle. And if I take my pencil to see where, when the stem vertically falls on the tomato, there's about that much space from the skin that we see of the garlic. And if I cut across with my pencil to see the angle of the garlic, I should be seeing like a triangle happen. Let me see, where is that triangle? Like a triangle like that, happening right in here. And I'm going to round this out, and I see there's a little curve here, and there's a little curve here, and that curve breaks past this tomato and cuts in to the wood block. And there's actually, this is like the particular sections of the garlic. And then this comes around and it starts to flatten out right here. Let's take it up on the other side. I'm rounding this out. Here's that weird piece of skin, papery skin. Sort of straightens out here. I'm looking at the negative space here. I'm going to look at the top of my garlic and see where it falls, and from where I am, it falls right here. So then that tells me that this comes up a little bit, rounds around. Again, you see sections of garlic cloves in there. And I don't really know where the stem falls yet, but let's find out. If I take my pencil and I find out where the top part of the stem angles up, it angles like something like right here. I'm going to put a line there. Then where does the other one angle? It angles at this part of the tomato right here. And you'll see that this tapers a little bit, so it tapers in. Then I can also see negative space right in here. So I'm going to follow that through, and it kind of drops down and falls into this. Good. That looks good to me. That looks good enough. Then if I look at the stem of the garlic, it also angles sort of like that. And the garlic kind of flows around. And right here is something that looks round. Then I feel like I've lost my curves here. So let's find it. So there's this, comes up around like that. And if I take a straight line, it tells me that this should be a little skinnier. So I took a straight line and I found this kind of negative space right here. It comes up around, starts to taper in, starts to be big again, and then that rounds out to here. Now right here is the center of the clove of garlic, and all these sections of the garlic meet here. It's like an orange. So I'm going to just follow what I see, a bit like that, loosely. And let's see if we can meet all those sections to it. So this goes like this. This will come around sort of like that. You don't really see it. It seems a little pale there. This, actually I think this comes out a little bit more. But you can't really tell. I'm not even going to put anything there since we can't really see it. This indents. Then right here seems to be a nice big section that seems pretty clear. So I'm going to do that. And then one comes around like this and breaks into this area that is hitting on the base of the wood block. And this rounds out a little bit. meets up also. This one meets up also. This one meets up also. And then this piece of skin is sort of in the way. Then there's these furry things going on around here. And I'm just gonna make an area for that. And again here, there, so there I have it. There it is, my 2 tomatoes and my garlic. And now I wanna see where the garlic falls on the wood block. And I think it's about there. And I'm gonna do a straight line like that. Now if I go behind it and I look at where it hits the horizon line here, the end of the wood block, it hits about, maybe a little lower, about here. And if I use my pencil to see where it angles like that. Okay, and that helps. So lets me know. Let me do the other side. If I take this straight across, I should be seeing this. So straight, there should be this little bit of triangle right there. Straight across. And then on this side, you can't see the back of the block. So where does that fall if I use my pencil and see where it angles into the tomato? And it angles right here. Just like that. So there. Now this particular block tapers again. It tapers so that you see this kind of triangle right in here in the negative space. And if I do it on the other side, it's a little bit like that. So if I go like that, I want you to see this negative space. So there's space in between the tomato and the line that takes you to it. Yeah. Something like that. Could be a little off. Then I'm just gonna, really don't know how wide it is. Let me see. It is 1. The thickness of the block is equal to the tomato. It's equal to here. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. It tells me it's about like that thick. So good. Now I have that. Again, let me see if this is the correct width. What would that equal? If I take my pencil and measure it, the end of my pencil and my thumb, it equals what? What does it equal? It equals, oh, it kind of equals in between here. So if I go like this, and I go like this, it's pretty close. And it doesn't really matter because we want the idea of it. Okay, so this line goes straight. We can't see this line because it ended there. Now I'm going to erase all these things because I don't really need them right now. I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to erase that and that. But you know, I don't have to erase those lines because sometimes those lines, it allows whoever is looking at your finished piece how you arrived there. Okay, let's start out with the garlic. So right now I see some lines going on in here. And some lines going on in here. And I see a little bit of darkness right in here. And a lot of shading. So I'm using my pencil really lightly. I want some dark areas that you see here, but then I'm not pressing on it as lightly. And there seems to be some shadowing in here. There seems to be a little bit of darkness right here. Then there's the shadow. That starts to hit the tomato. And I'm going to refine this. Now, right in here, there's a shadow. And this is really important. I'm going to follow the contour of this clove of garlic. And by doing so, it describes as well as shows tone and some form of shading and shadow. But you see how everything's coming from this area? And I'm following that. So everything has to come. It's very much like a flower. So right here, I'm just going to give it a light shadow. Then I'm just going to follow every single area that I see. It looks like it has a shadow. I noticed that right in here, there's a shadow. So I'm going to lightly use my pencil. Goes darkest in here. I'm going to give some more of those little lines. There's some weird things going in here, which is part of the skin. Start to get a little dark in here. It's pretty dark in here. Fold around. And pretty much, without knowing what I am doing, like what I'm describing, I'm just putting marks wherever I see darker areas and little lines. And that's enough. Flattens out here, starts to have a little bit of shadow in here. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to add a little bit of lightness back into here. Because it's dark in some areas and light in others. I'm going to do this with my pencil because this area is really, has a lot of texture. I don't really know how to describe it, so I'm going to do this best. This piece of skin kind of comes around. Now I'm going to get into the middle. It has a nice shadow in here. Then it has all these little hairy things, and I'm just going to do this. And the nice thing about this is it's different from this. So we know, oh, this is something different. I'm going to put in a softened tone in here. Then I'm going to go back into it and put little dots in it. I'm going to show just a little bit of a rim for where it starts and ends. There. Okay. All right. So right there. Next, we're going to go to this tomato. And I see very close to here a white little spot. Then I see a grayer spot up above it, kind of does that. And I see little spots here. I see a little bit of lightness here. I see a little bit of lightness way up here. And that also tells me, looking at that this could tuck in a little bit more. There's more space. And that hangs out a little bit like that. That has light space, and you don't have to do anything too particular. But I want to show some kind of reflection. So now I'm going to, first I'm going to give it a shadow. This right tomato is sitting more solidly on the wood as opposed to that one. So I'm going back. First it's dark, then I'm kind of shadowing it out. Okay. Now I'm going to work on, this tomato is red, and I really want it to read that this is light and this is dark. There's a little bit of darkness right in here, and it sort of follows up the tomato. But it doesn't exactly really matter, because what's important is just that you show these really soft tonal changes, because then it just makes it look like it's some kind of reflection. I'm keeping this one white, and right now I'm just going to go over it lightly in this area. Then I'm going to go a little bit darker around it like that. And I want to fuzzy it up because it's definitely a reflection, but it's a fuzzy reflection. It's not sharp. See how I'm sort of following the contour of the tomato? You don't always have to do that, but you could. In this case, I just want it to be darker, so now I'm going to use different types of strokes to get to it, to get the depth I want. Now I'm going to do the stem, and the stem seems to be dark on this side, and then I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. Then I see this little part. It's kind of hard to tell, but I'm just going to make it dark and light. And then there's this. I'm just going to give everything a little bit of description, but not a whole lot. Then right here is some nobular. It's part of the sepal. And this seems like it's turning, and then you see the lightness come right here. Sometimes it's nice to show that. There's a negative space there. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to crawl this up. Going to shadow this in. Looks like this is where it was cut off the vine. I might lighten that up a little bit just to show that. Seems to be light on top. Okay. This is super skinny. Comes around. It's thicker here. This looks like a dark spot there that rolls out sort of light. This is just a thin hair. This comes out like this. This comes out like that. This crosses over. It's like that. It's a little difficult to know exactly what's going on. So I'm just faking it. So this swoops down because there's a depression like that, right? And now it hits close to the kiss right here. Rounds out. It's almost like I see the reflection of the right tomato. I guess they're kissing. And the other thing I like, I feel like there's a little bit of a light spot in here, so I want to, a little bit of lightness, and I also want to clear up that little area there. So I want it to be like this goes over, and then this area I want a little lighter, and then I'll go dark. And again, I'm going to treat this whole area like I did the other one. And I'm being very loosey. I'm creating my areas that I really want. Right here looks like it's a bruise, so I'm going to make it a little darker. Then it has a light area over it like that. Then it goes super dark. Not super dark, but darker. And you'll also notice that this tomato is a little lighter than the other tomato. And I will emphasize that at the very end, because sometimes you put things off as to how dark you want something to be, to see it all in relation to each other. Because contrast plays a big role. There's also a little light spot right in here. And it overall seems kind of light in here. Seems darker in here. I'm going around this area of reflection, and I'm trying to make it a little soft. I don't want a hard. Then I sort of noticed that the very edge of the tomato seems a little lighter, so I'm not going to make it be really strong on that side. I'm going to sort of leave a little lightness, see there? And I notice the shadow goes in here, a little bit of a shadow in here. Then all this is very light tone. And again in here, I also think, wow, this could be darker, maybe not. So this really reads reflection. Like that. Let's go in here. Okay, now I'm going to show the shadow that hits a little bit in here. It's the darkest thing, and it's blurred. And you can see like a triangle hit right in here, because only this tip hits the ground, or hits the wood. Okay, great. Very nice. Now, let's do the wood grain. I know that seems kind of crazy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go like this, and I'm going to horizontally I'm not going to do that. I am not a seriously detailed renderer, but you can be. I have seen some beautiful wood grain happen, but that is not me. However, I can help a little bit. I can do a little bit. So it seems darkest closest here. I'm going to come back in here. It lightens up a little bit here. So it gets dark in here. Same thing here. And now I'm just going to loosely draw wood grain. And if I go straight from where the garlic is, sort of does that, kind of does that, kind of goes like that. And I'm going to kind of sketch that in. So it's a little bit more than a line. Can I add a little bit more? Start adding more in here. Kind of curves around like this. I don't really know what it's doing. I'm not going to be exact. I'm going to do different striations that I think make it look like it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fuzz this in. Just going over the lines I made, but make it a little thicker and arbitrary and not too specific. Then I'm going to go over here. This kind of comes out like this. Sort of comes out like this. Kind of comes out like that. Starts to get a little straight. Angles a little bit. Starts to angle. Starts to soften. I am sure there is a real specific way to do this. If you look up tree rings, how to draw tree rings, but for this, we just want to describe that's on a block of beautiful wood. At the same time, I'm going to kind of make this a little darker at the bottom, just to kind of clean it. I'm going to do a little bit of shading, just to give it a little bit of depth. Some darker areas seem to be in here, as I tried to point out. Seems to be some dark areas in here. Oh, there seems to be a lot of dark areas in here. It starts to get a little dark in here, and it takes you to the garlic that shadows up here. Softly, soft shadowing, soft. Okay, now I'm going to take some of these lines that I see, I'm going to like pretend, and I'm following this angle. I'm going to add a little bit one, maybe it goes like this, maybe things hit here, maybe they hit here. Again, I'm following this. This would probably go a little into here, into here. I'm doing it really lightly because I don't want it to be that important. I want it to say, remember this line goes all the way, so I'm going to show you that. Then there's this dark area in here, which is darkest here because we want to show the shadow. And then it kind of blends out a little bit like that. Comes a little dark in here. And there's some, I'm just going to go lightly across like that. Lightly across like that. Show a little bit of shading. Show a little bit of, and I'm going to go through it one more time. going to kind of bring all these little scratchy shading things together, sort of muted into, you know, so you don't really see the pencil lines as much as you just see that it's describing something. And sometimes you got to go over things so it becomes more of a form like this in here, and less of just lines that are crisscrossing on the page. I'm going to emphasize some of this just a little bit. I'm going to emphasize this a little bit, but not too much. Just lightly. I'm using the side of my pencil. It's really helpful. You have to kind of keep your pencil pretty sharp. I mean, obviously I haven't sharpened it since I started this drawing. I'm going to go back in here because I think that this is a darker area that I want to really push. This is where contrast. You can make decisions to push something for the benefit of the drawing and less about what the object. Kind of clean that little area up. I'm gonna shadow this in a little bit more because it seems a little darker. And I'm also going to darken it right in here because I just want to push the reflection from the garlic and just kind of weave it in a little bit into this. And this is the darkest area. And I think that's about it. Just gonna bring this down a little bit, just so it really says I am going off. I am angling off this flat plane. That little spot, not that it matters. This little spot, not that it matters. I like little scratchy marks, so I don't care. I'm gonna make sure that this is right. Actually, this could be a little, even if it may not hit that way on the image.